Start off with a brief statement.
Yeah, we're just obviously getting ready for South Dakota and have to defend the 3 tomorrow night. And it's a really well-coached team that executes really well. They play really hard. They cut hard. And obviously the stats tell everybody what a great three-point shooting team they are.
Is Hagedorn kind of a Vanover version? This big guy that shoots threes, or different type player?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with Tyler is he can post up a little bit too. It's not just pick and roll pop type stuff. You switch, he'll roll into the post a little bit. He's a really good basketball player. I mean, he can shoot the ball. He's a fifth-year player, so he's an older, veteran-type guy. They have 5 seniors on their team, and it shows in how they played on the road. It's not easy. Like everybody on the West Coast knows, playing at Hawaii is really, really difficult, especially in their own tournament. And they went in there and won that tournament, which doesn't happen often. And then they won 2 neutral games there, so they've been away from home 3 of their 5 games, and they got some really. Cody Kelly, we played against at Nevada when he was at Wyoming. He's a really tough kid, and you're talking about a basketball team that has 3 all-league players in the preseason. Most valuable player in the league in Stanley Amude. So they present a lot of problems.
Hey, you and Todd Lee, I guess, go way back. I used to say you guys met at San Diego, and you asked him if he wanted to come back to his home state and coach with you. What do you remember about those CBA days? He told me there was some ref that had it in for you and teed you up real quick, ejected you, and you sat in this high up in the stands and sent notes down to the bench with a trainer. I just wonder, how would you describe y'all's relationship? What do you remember about those wild, crazy CBA days, I guess?
Yeah, Todd's lifetime friend. Obviously, we worked together in Rapid City, with the Thrillers, and had some great teams with a lot of stories. Surprised to remember that one. But he, just a guy that's, we talk basketball all the time. Everywhere he's been, they've won. When he was at Irvine as an assistant, they won. When he was at Cal State Bakersfield, they won. I thought he did a great job with Coach Marley. When I was at Arizona State, actually, he was at Grand Canyon, so we were in the same city in Phoenix, and did a lot of stuff together. And Coach Marley thinks the world of him, and he's just a really, really good, fundamentally basketball coach. I mean, his teams play smart, they play hard, they play tough.
What have you seen from South Dakota's perimeter defense?
Yeah, I think from a defensive standpoint, they're really solid. They don't get out and try to create a lot of turnovers. They're just well coached in their schemes. They're not going to gamble. They're not going to reach. They're not going to get out of position. They give great help. They're a high take-a-charge team. They'll stand in the way of dribble drive penetrations and try to take charges. But they're just a kind of a semi-pack line defensive team that they're not going to try to play tricks with you. They are who they are defensively, and they do what they do really well.
Does he 0 for 16 from 3 this season? And obviously he showed last year that he's a pretty good, solid three-point shooter. Where's his confidence at right now?
Well, he's taken 16 shots. He lets it fly. So I would say his confidence is pretty high. And with any player, the only thing you want is just worry about the next shot. Don't worry about what happened 3 or 4 shots before. It's the same if you're making shots. I mean, you can only worry about once you catch the ball, and he's getting his reps up, which is all you can ask. And hopefully the lid will come off from 3 tomorrow night.
You said that you had talked to Coach Jones after the game. What insights did he give you on your team?
Yeah, so I actually talked to Brandon Chambers and Derek Syak from both on the Texas Southern. They gave us some great stuff. They went through personnel, 1 through 8 basically, 1 through 9 on our team, and told us some of their thoughts and told us where they thought our holes were. Both those guys, because they have, we worked together in the past. they said, hey, we thought maybe you'd trap a little bit more in the backcourt, and they felt like we did a good job isolating poor defenders on their own roster. So it was, and then we shared a bunch of stuff with them as well.
Mason sat like the final 13 plus minutes the other night. Just what went into the decision to sit him?
Yeah, just focus. Felt like he needed to be a little bit more focused on both ends of the floor and from defensive assignment stuff. And then the team's playing well, and so when you're playing well, sometimes you roll with those guys. Well, not sometimes. I'm always going to roll with whoever's playing well, and whoever's playing with a ton of energy and a lot of enthusiasm.
Back when you guys were with the Thrillers, I mean, teams weren't affiliated with NBA teams like they are now. And Todd was saying you knew literally where every player was in the world, like Italy, Greece, Spain, every NBA guy, every season. So, because you guys had a lot of roster movement, what was that like when you could lose guys to NBA teams? They just signed whoever I guess they wanted.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy roster situation.
No, Todd's right. I mean, I think one year, Bob, we had 61 players. I remember getting a phone call at maybe like 4:30 in the morning from the Rapid City Airport. They said 3 of your guys are at the airport, and 2 of them were going to Italy and 1 was going to Spain. It was our 3 best players. They had all gotten pretty good lucrative deals and left, and the other guy we had suspended, Wes Matthews, the day before for the upcoming game. So that put us at, I think we had 6 guys that night because our roster was already at 9 instead of 10. And the game went into overtime. We played Henry Bibby's team, and one of our guys fouled out, which meant Wes, who was suspended, was in uniform, and so I had to put a suspended player in the game. And I think he had like 11 straight points in overtime. Hadn't played a second up until that moment. But that's how talented Wes Matthews was. I think that was one of the teams that Todd was with. But it was, back then, there was no buyouts and stuff with players, going overseas or coming back, and so you'd have to know which guys were unhappy in which countries, or you had to understand which countries didn't pay. And then you had to know which countries, from a roster standpoint, were non-patient. A U.S. player, American player would go over there in some countries and have 2 bad games and get sent home. And so it was just a constant game of connections with overseas agents and agents in the U.S. that would tell you what was going on from a revolving door with players.
What team did Henry Bibby coach?
Oklahoma City Cavalry.
Coach, Mason said that he likes you getting on him and the consistency that you bring when you get on him. How did he respond this week after you didn't play him in the final minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Nicky, just like any player, that he would, he'd love to play as many minutes as possible, which means 40 minutes. But he's been great. He and I talked yesterday after practice, and now that he's 4 games into his junior year, we need leadership from him, not just to be a good player. Obviously, he is a good player. We all know that. I think the next step in his progress is to become a leader, and that's part of our job as coaches. There's a lot of people that say, well, this guy's a natural-born leader and all that. Well, yes, some guys are. I think that's true. But then there's other guys that, with nurturing and talking to them, and you got to explain, what the true meaning of leadership is. And a lot of these guys are still learning stuff. So, as I'm still learning too.